Thank you. So good afternoon, and thank you to the hosts. This has been a wonderful conference. We had the privilege of presenting our glitter belt presentation in 2022, so it's been exciting to see the development of the past few years. My name is Ravi Deepak, and it's an honor to present on behalf of my co-author, who's been leading the endeavor, Dr. Narayanan Komerath. We're based in Hampton, Virginia. I don't know if you know where Hampton is, but basically it's in the Chesapeake Bay. We are next to a small, basically what is a marsh. So flooding has always been a problem for us ever since I grew up. And what we were wondering is how can we take our 2022 presentation, the glitter belt, and adapt it and endeavor to change the sea level, or tackle the sea level rise conundrum. So in 2022, we were looking at the glitter belt architecture using high altitude platforms. These ultralight reflectors called flying leaves persist at about 100,000 feet or 30 kilometers. They reflect the sun, and their high aspect ratio and low wing loading permit stay above controlled airspace. They're assembled at altitude using smaller leaflets. So you can see some of the conceptual drawings. Right here. So these are 9 flying leaflets that come together. And what they would do is they stay up for about 12 hours. And then they leave the leaflets up floating with 3 of these across. And they would basically be able to control the maneuverability of all the leaflets tethered together. The glitter belt, so right here, what you can see is a flying leaves. Is this showing up on your screen? Is that it? Okay. So right here, you can see the flying leaflets denote the number of flying leaflets built each year. It is kept at about 40 million per year worldwide, and these numbers of operating flying leaves rise to about 180 million in 20 years. Keeping the leaflets flat as flying leaflets manufacturing is ramped down, the black dashed line, as you can see here, is the heat level decrease. Our deployment schedule will reduce net heat retention back to 1990 levels within 30 years. Surely it takes hundreds of millions of launches, but all total, under monitoring conditions, we don't expect any emissions as there would be electric. So sea level rising is approximately 4 millimeters per year. 44% of that rise is due to thermal expansion. Again, our problem is looking at another phase, not necessarily the geological premise as our previous presentations, but looking at the water interactions with the air. The other 56% is because fresh water is less dense than salt. Our aim is to reduce sea level rise by 120 millimeters within the next 30 years. The 3 avenues that we're looking at are the reversal of thermal expansion, the delayed melting enhances the ice albedo, and the thicker ice shield, the thicker sea level ice thickening the sea level ice on the ice shelves. So as the thermal expansion is reversed by reducing summer heating over tropics and temperate zones, polar ice melting is delayed each year so that ice cover is restored and albedo improves. Sea ice at the Arctic coastline is thickened so that waves cannot reach under the ice shelf and crack it. We found data on the percentage of the area in each latitude band that is covered by land versus ocean. Surface effects are felt down to 700 meters. So we use the thermocline data for 4 regions: polar region, year-round, temperate zone winter, temperate zone summer, and tropical year-round. Summer heat involved in a 1 degree change in the surface temperature is found to see the effect due to the glitter deployment. So as you can tell, the coefficient of thermal expansion rises approximately like 12x from 0 to 32 Celsius. Below the top 30 meters of turbulent mixing, heating felt down to 700, sustained over the summer. Protecting the ice shelves. There's a danger more ice shelves will break and fall into the ocean. A thicker sea ice belt will damp out ocean waves and keep warmer waters from getting under overhanging shelves. The control strategy is to increase sea ice thickness each summer and changing the balance between summer melting and winter accumulation. So as you can see here, and you've probably seen throughout basically the news, the sea ice is now cracking. Which is actually an interesting fracture problem if you think about the earlier presentations. For sea ice formation restoration, a 30-centimeter thick new ice layer on the surface will survive a summer and have an albedo as much as 0.7 compared to the 0.05 in open waters or the 0.06 of older gray ice. We assume that removing latent heat enough for this layer of new ice would be effective with the factors of transmission of efficiency. The albedo of new ice has a multiplicative effect over 50 times the area of the solar reflectors deployed each year. So this is some of the early results that we've sort of calculated. And you can find a link to the Jupyter notebooks in our paper. The full-scale deployment plan shown for the reverse of net heat retention after 5 years of weather data to enable predictive computing, or at least our AI-based predictions. The figure shows 3 different results. The blue triangles are the ice cover fraction restored. By about year 15, the ice cover is complete, and the ice just gets thicker each year after that. The black circles show the drop in average sea level, the temperature sea level, and the red spiders will show the drop in sea level in decimeters. So right now it's showing about 0.6 decimeters. So basically we're at about half of the 120 millimeter change that we wanted to have within 30 years. But that's expected because the 44% of the sea level rise and the rest being due to freshwater ice. So the other 56 is due to the freshwater ice forming again. Inside 25 years, ice covers back, and within 30 years, ocean levels have reached back down to 1990 levels. So some of the implications for the flying leaves deployed from northern and southern nations will reach polar regions early in the spring and stay late in autumn. Delayed melting in the spring helps restore the restoration process. Arctic coasts is a less challenging because it is at the South Pole Circle. Cold, denser air and the ability to come down below 18 kilometers will operate during shorter days. The summer follower plan for the main project is well suited to the reverse of thermal expansion of the tropics and temperate zones. So the train of these leaves in the annual missions will achieve the 3 objectives. So as I mentioned, Dr. Komerath couldn't come because he's since retired from Georgia Tech. And now he's on a mission to build an 8 meter span vehicle This has changed from our 32-meter span vehicle that we had originally proposed in the 2022 paper. Since we found that there's a new opportunity with island change meteorology, providing several orders of magnitude more data than currently are available to do for weather and climate predicting computations. We were also looking at the 8-meter for flying over wildfires, helping doing routine meteorology, maybe even astronomical radio astronomy. Whether flying leaves assembled from 8-meter vehicles are sufficient for hopefully helping also figuring out the change in small island nations as far as the flying leaves. Our conclusions were the stratospheric long endurance ultralight reflectors swarms will reverse net heat retention under monitoring and control. A pivot to smaller vehicles opens up revenue generating growth with meteorological data and early wildfire detections. This enables reliable climate predictions for safe intervention. Reduced heating over oceans reverses thermal expansion and sea level rise. The summer follower swarms of reflectors over oceans and polar regions are appropriate strategies. Oceans will be lowered within 57 millimeters inside 10 years and over 120 millimeters in 30 years. The proposed level at the proposed level of intervention. These flying leaf swarms will thicken sea level ice around Antarctica and grow back northern ice caps in 20 years if desired. A small change to the annual melt freeze balance can restore Arctic Ocean albedo. These flying swarms tracing the Arctic coastline on high altitude winds can shift the balance between summer melting and winter sea level ice growth. Protecting ice shelves from wave actions, certainly skepticism is warranted given such positive results, and we're continuing to study them further. I know the presentation was brief, but more detail can be found in our papers. And I'd like to acknowledge again the conference as well as Dr. Komerath, who's been leading the charge. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for the presentation. So it's a really interesting concept. I find myself asking, obviously there's a lot of data collecting advantage here, but
sure,
what would be the difference between doing this and a more space-based solar radiation management technology that seems like it's in a larger area that would maybe a little bit easier than a swarm of millions of little drones, which would be great for other purposes, but for the purposes specifically.
So you're talking about putting like a sunshade out at L1?
Ish.
Okay, yeah, there's opportunities out there. I think there's been some folks that have been talking, there's been a recent paper published. Dr. Komerath had some early work as well on looking at star shades as well as other opportunities with space-based solar. I think for us, what we thought was interesting is the direct applications to outside meteorological data, wildfire detection, as well as disaster response things with these high altitude platforms where they're just sort of hovering at the right, they can be on demand and provide emergency opportunities for collecting information. Whereas if you have to wait for a launch vehicle, or it's a much larger, grander time scale. High altitude platforms are already out there right now. So hopefully this could be a compounding opportunity for the aerospace right now.
More questions? Let's see. I can ask one question.
Sure.
I'm curious about sort of the less technical parts of this and kind of the more social parts of this, right? Like,
sure.
How would you think about global participation and sort of buy-in from?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you need this actually. I haven't been really holding it up. No, I think island nations are a perfect example of who can participate best. And we were in touch with the Mauritius and a few other island nations that would really be a really opportunistic like for us. So yeah, I think that's global participation is key.
Any final questions? We'll break for coffee. We'll come back in 20 minutes and start the second half. Thank you guys so much.